Before the arrival of European explorers, the vast North American continent was a vibrant tapestry of diverse indigenous nations, each with its own intricate societies, languages, spiritual beliefs, and sophisticated systems of governance and trade, thriving for millennia in harmony with the abundant landscapes that sustained them. From the sprawling agricultural communities of the southeast, cultivating corn, beans, and squash with advanced methods, to the nomadic hunter-gatherer groups of the Great Plains, whose lives revolved around the buffalo, and the fishing and cedar-carving peoples of the Pacific Northwest, these lands were far from empty, supporting an estimated population of millions who had developed profound ecological knowledge and intricate social structures. The arrival of European ships, beginning notably with Christopher Columbus in 1492, marked the dawn of an unprecedented era, as waves of Spanish conquistadors, English settlers, French fur traders, and Dutch merchants began to spill onto the shores, driven by a complex mix of motivations ranging from the fervent pursuit of gold and new trade routes to the desire for land, religious conversion, and escape from the socio-political turmoil of their homelands. These initial encounters were often a bewildering blend of mutual curiosity and profound cultural misunderstanding, with native peoples observing the strange ships and metal tools with wonder, while Europeans, captivated by the continent's seemingly limitless resources and the exotic inhabitants, often viewed them through a lens of presumed cultural superiority, quickly shifting from initial pleasantries to an imperialistic agenda rooted in conquest and resource exploitation. This stark contrast in worldviews, where indigenous peoples understood land as communal and to be stewarded, clashing with the European concept of individual ownership and limitless expansion, laid the foundation for inevitable conflict, further exacerbated by the devastating, often unintended introduction of European diseases like smallpox, against which native populations had no immunity, leading to catastrophic demographic collapses that preceded even the widespread armed conflicts. Early trade relations, initially appearing beneficial, quickly became a double-edged sword. While Native Americans eagerly acquired desirable European goods such as metal knives, axes, kettles, and eventually firearms in exchange for valuable furs, this newfound dependence on foreign commodities began to subtly undermine traditional economies and escalate intertribal rivalries for control over prime hunting grounds and trade routes. The introduction of horses by the Spanish also began to transform indigenous mobility and warfare, particularly in the plains, laying the groundwork for the powerful mounted warrior cultures that would emerge. However, behind the veneer of initial exchange and curious interaction, the seeds of future subjugation were being sown, as European hunger for land and resources proved insatiable, inevitably leading to forced displacement, broken treaties, and widespread violence that irrevocably altered the destiny of the continent's original inhabitants. Before the profound disruption of European colonization, the indigenous nations of North America had forged a formidable arsenal of traditional weaponry, each instrument a testament to their deep understanding of the natural world and their unparalleled ingenuity in harnessing its raw materials for both sustenance and self-preservation. Far from being rudimentary tools, these were highly sophisticated implements, meticulously crafted with intimate knowledge of local flora, fauna, and geology, reflecting centuries, even millennia of refined design and practical application. The bow and arrow, perhaps the quintessential symbol of Native American warfare and hunting, stood as a marvel of engineering. Bows were fashioned from carefully selected resilient woods like Osage orange, hickory or ash, often reinforced with sinew for increased power and durability, while bowstrings were typically twisted animal sinew, renowned for its strength. Arrows, meticulously straight and fletched with bird feathers for stable flight, were tipped with precisely napped arrowheads made from a diverse array of materials, including razor-sharp flint, volcanic obsidian, chert, or quartz, each painstakingly flaked to create lethal cutting or piercing edges, and in some regions even hammered native copper was utilised for its workability and effectiveness. The mastery required to accurately launch these projectiles, often with astonishing rapidity, made native archers exceptionally dangerous at range, capable of bringing down large game or inflicting swift casualties in open combat or dense forest ambushes. Complementing their ranged capabilities, a diverse array of clubs and tomahawks served as devastating tools in close quarters combat. Clubs range from simple, fire-hardened wooden staves, dense and heavy, to more elaborate designs incorporating heavy, grooved stones expertly lashed onto wooden handles, delivering bone-shattering impacts. Later innovations, sometimes inspired by the shapes of European rifle stocks, developed into gun stock clubs, often adorned with a sharp pointed blade or an embedded stone, making them multifunctional implements. Particularly fearsome were the clubs incorporating the natural serrated jaws of large animals like elk, bear or buffalo, transforming nature's design into a formidable weapon. Early tomahawks were not initially metal. They were often small, hafted stone axes, sharp enough for felling small trees or splitting wood, but equally effective in hand-to-hand combat due to their balance and sharp edge. The spear, a versatile weapon, saw use in both thrusting and throwing, its long wooden shaft tipped with a fire-hardened point, or a larger, often barbed stone or bonehead, proving invaluable for hunting large game like buffalo or for piercing defences in battle. Alongside these, knives, universally indispensable tools for daily survival, were also potent close combat weapons, crafted from the same high-quality knapped stone materials as arrowheads, varying in size and design according to tribal traditions and intended use. For defence, while less emphasis was placed on heavy body armour common in other parts of the world, shields were crucial. Typically crafted from tough, dried animal rawhide, especially the incredibly durable neckhide of buffalo, these shields were surprisingly resilient against arrows and glancing blows from blunt weapons. Often adorned with sacred symbols and paint designs, they were not merely protective gear but spiritual talismans. Some tribes, particularly in coastal or forested regions, also employed rudimentary forms of body armour, such as layered hide tunics, wooden slat armour, or even bone plates interwoven into clothing for added protection against specific threats. The collective genius embedded in the design and fabrication of these weapons speaks volumes about the profound ecological knowledge, engineering prowess, and martial skill of the indigenous peoples, whose traditional armaments were perfectly attuned to their environments and the exigencies of their dynamic societies, long before the disruptive arrival of foreign technologies. The very landscape of warfare across North America was irrevocably altered by the introduction of European firearms, a technological leap that rendered traditional armaments, while still formidable, fundamentally different in their application. When the initial reports of thunderous explosions and distant, unseen death reached inland communities, the inherent power of the musket and pistol was immediately understood by indigenous warriors, representing a paradigm shift in destructive capability that transcended anything they had previously encountered. The capacity to strike from a distance with unparalleled lethality, coupled with the psychological impact of the deafening roar and clouds of smoke, created an awe-inspiring, often terrifying, presence on the battlefield, making European guns an object of intense desire. Acquisition of these game-changing weapons quickly became a driving force in Native American economies and intertribal relations. While some firearms were occasionally captured in skirmishes or offered as diplomatic gifts, the vast majority entered indigenous hands through robust trade networks, often controlled by dominant European powers seeking alliances or lucrative resources. The insatiable European demand for beaver pelts, driven by the fur fashion industry, found its perfect counterpart in the indigenous desire for muskets, lead shot, gunpowder, and metal tools. This exchange created a complex web of commerce that saw furs flow eastward across the continent, while guns flowed westward, establishing specific tribes as powerful middlemen who could control access to these vital imports, leading to shifting allegiances and escalating rivalries as nations vied for control over trade routes and resources. Despite the inherent challenges of adopting an alien technology, from understanding the intricate mechanics of flintlock actions and the precise measurement of powder and shot, to the demanding maintenance required in rugged conditions, Native Americans exhibited a remarkable and often underestimated aptitude for mastering firearms. They quickly learned to load, aim and fire with surprising efficiency, adapting their tactics to incorporate the new weaponry. Ingenuity became paramount. Faced with the chronic scarcity of European-manufactured gunpowder and lead, warriors would repurpose available materials, sometimes moulding shot from melted lead items, or even using small pebbles when lead was unavailable, demonstrating an incredible resourcefulness. This adaptation was not merely about proficiency, but about integration. Guns did not entirely replace traditional weapons, but often complemented them, with a powerful musket shot used to break an enemy charge before warriors closed the distance with tomahawks and war clubs. The impact of firearms on indigenous warfare was profound and multifaceted. They significantly escalated the scale and lethality of intertribal conflicts, transforming long-standing rivalries into devastating fur wars, where access to weaponry became a matter of survival and dominance, leading to the collapse or expansion of entire tribal confederacies. For example, tribes with earlier or more consistent access to firearms gained immense power over their less armed neighbours, fundamentally altering the balance of power across vast regions. Against the European colonisers, armed native warriors, though often numerically disadvantaged and facing logistical hurdles in maintaining their supply of ammunition, proved to be formidable adversaries, particularly in guerrilla warfare tactics where concentrated musket fire from ambush could decimate an unsuspecting column. The integration of firearms not only changed how battles were fought, but also became a critical factor in the geopolitical landscape of colonial North America, influencing tribal alliances with European powers and shaping the course of countless conflicts. The arrival of the horse with European colonizers, particularly the Spanish conquistadors, introduced an animal that would profoundly reshape indigenous societies and warfare, especially across the vast plains and prairies of North America. Before this, native peoples relied on dogs for carrying loads and on their own 2 feet for hunting and travel, making their movements largely limited by human endurance. The horse, however, was a living engine, a creature of immense power, speed and stamina that revolutionized virtually every aspect of life for many tribes. Initially encountered with a mixture of awe and caution, Native Americans rapidly embraced these magnificent animals, quickly mastering the art of horsemanship, often to a degree that surpassed their European counterparts. This adoption wasn't just about riding, it was about integrating the horse into their very way of life, turning them into invaluable partners in hunting, travel, and most critically, in the escalating conflicts against encroaching settlers and rival tribes. For the nomadic peoples of the Great Plains, the horse became nothing short of a sacred gift, transforming their hunting practices from arduous foot chases to dynamic, high-speed pursuits of vast buffalo herds. A mounted hunter could bring down far more game, providing abundant food, hides for shelter and clothing, and bones for tools, leading to an era of unparalleled prosperity and expansion for tribes like the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Comanche. This newfound mobility not only enriched their diets and material culture, but also allowed them to cover immense distances with ease, facilitating larger-scale migrations and enabling them to outmaneuver enemies more effectively. As these tribes became expert horse breeders and riders, their entire societies adapted, with their social structures, ceremonial practices, and even art reflecting the central role of the horse. It became a measure of wealth, a symbol of prestige, and an indispensable component of their identity. In warfare, the introduction of the horse was a game changer, giving rise to formidable cavalry warfare that was uniquely Native American. A warrior on horseback possessed a dramatic advantage over a foot soldier, capable of rapid advances and swift retreats, outflanking enemies and delivering devastating charges. The speed and maneuverability of mounted warriors allowed them to launch surprise attacks, encircle enemies, and escape pursuit with an efficiency previously unimaginable. They developed specialized tactics such as the buffalo run for combat, where warriors would ride close to the enemy, firing arrows or muskets, then swiftly turn away, making them incredibly difficult targets. Against the rigid formations of European infantry, the fluid, hit-and-run tactics of Native American horse warriors proved incredibly effective, disrupting enemy lines and instilling fear. This transformative role of the horse allowed certain tribes to dominate vast territories, creating powerful warrior societies that could effectively resist the initial waves of European and American expansion for decades. The ability to deploy mounted warriors with both traditional weapons and increasingly firearms meant that the colonizers faced a highly mobile, adaptable, and formidable foe. While ultimately insufficient to halt the full tide of conquest, the horse empowered Native Americans to fight on their own terms for an extended period, shaping the landscape of conflict and leaving an indelible mark on the history of the American West. The image of the indigenous horse warrior remains an iconic symbol of resistance and freedom, reflecting a profound and lasting cultural transformation. Against the technologically superior and often numerically overwhelming forces of European colonization, Native American nations refined and perfected a dynamic style of warfare rooted in adaptability and intimate knowledge of their vast homelands, effectively pioneering what would later be recognized as highly sophisticated asymmetrical warfare. This was not merely a collection of isolated skirmishes, but a deliberate and highly effective strategy designed to exploit the colonizers' weaknesses while leveraging their own strengths, primarily their unparalleled mastery of the terrain and their ability to move and strike with ghost-like swiftness. At the heart of their combat doctrine lay the ambush and the raid, tactics executed with chilling precision and devastating effect. Warriors would meticulously choose their ground, often along narrow trails, river crossings, or vulnerable supply routes, waiting in complete concealment, sometimes for days, until the perfect moment arrived. Then, with a sudden coordinated explosion of gunfire, arrows, and war cries, they would erupt from the dense forests, rocky ravines, or tall prairie grasses, unleashing a concentrated, terrifying initial volley designed to cause maximum shock and disarray. This was followed by swift, brutal hand-to-hand combat, aiming to inflict as many casualties as possible before melting back into the landscape with the same uncanny stealth, leaving the disoriented and often heavily armed European columns unable to retaliate effectively. This hit-and-run approach was intrinsically linked to their profound and unparalleled knowledge of the land, a strategic advantage that far outweighed any European technological superiority. Native warriors navigated vast wildernesses with an innate understanding of every trail, every water source, every hidden grove, and every natural contour that could offer concealment or a strategic advantage. They moved silently, effortlessly through terrain that utterly baffled their European counterparts, who were reliant on rudimentary maps, slow-moving supply trains, and rigid formations. This deep ecological intelligence allowed them to anticipate enemy movements with uncanny accuracy, to select ideal ambush sites, and to vanish without a trace, often covering remarkable distances to strike distant settlements or supply lines before disappearing once more into the seemingly boundless wilderness. They lived off the land with minimal provisions, making them incredibly agile and difficult to track or contain, effectively turning the vast, challenging American environment into their most potent ally. Beyond the physical devastation, Native American tactics were masterclasses in psychological warfare, designed to systematically demoralize and break the will of the colonizers. The constant, unpredictable threat of ambush instilled pervasive fear and anxiety among European soldiers and settlers, transforming every journey, every patrol, and even the daily routine of fort life into a nerve-wracking ordeal. Raids targeting not just soldiers, but also critical supply lines, livestock, and crops aimed to deny the enemy essential resources, creating severe logistical nightmares and forcing European forces to divert vast resources to defence, stretching their lines thin. The elusive nature of the native warriors, their ability to strike seemingly from nowhere and disappear just as quickly, created a sense of fighting a phantom enemy, leading to exhaustion, frustration, and a profound undermining of morale. By avoiding large pitched battles where European numerical and technological superiority could be fully brought to bear, and instead focusing on attrition, disruption, and the relentless installation of terror, Native American nations demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of strategic warfare that defied conventional European military thought and proved incredibly effective in protracting their heroic resistance for centuries. The historical narrative of Native American resistance against colonial encroachment is not merely a chronicle of isolated clashes, but a profound testament to the enduring spirit of defiance, often manifested through highly organized resistance movements, orchestrated by visionary leaders who sought to unite disparate nations against a common existential threat. These were not random acts of rebellion, but strategic, often pan-tribal endeavors to defend ancestral lands, cultural integrity, and a cherished way of life from overwhelming foreign aggression. A prime example is Pontiac's rebellion, erupting in 1763 in the wake of the French and Indian War, where the Ottawa chief Pontiac galvanized a confederacy of Algonquian-speaking tribes, including the Delaware, Shawnee, and Potawatomi, across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. His brilliant strategy involved coordinated surprise attacks on numerous British forts and settlements, effectively driving the British back and compelling them to reconsider their expansionist policies with the Proclamation of 1763, demonstrating the formidable power of unified Indigenous action, even if its ultimate goal of expelling the British was not fully achieved. Decades later, in the early 19th century, the Shawnee brothers Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa, the Prophet, forged perhaps the most ambitious pan-tribal confederacy to date, aiming to resist the relentless westward expansion of the newly formed United States. Tecumseh, a peerless orator and military strategist, crisscrossed the continent, urging tribes from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico to set aside their differences and recognize that land was not an individual commodity, but a communal heritage belonging to all native peoples, thus requiring universal consent for any cession. His spiritual brother, the Prophet, provided a powerful cultural and religious revitalization movement that bolstered their unity. While their confederacy suffered significant setbacks, notably at the Battle of Tippecanoe, Tecumseh's vision profoundly challenged American expansionism, nearly halting it, and showcased the immense potential of Indigenous unity against a rapidly industrializing foe, leaving an indelible mark on both Native American and American history. Beyond these broad movements, countless iconic figures emerged, their stories embodying the fierce courage, strategic brilliance, and unwavering dedication of their peoples. Sitting Bull, the revered Hunkpapa Lakota spiritual leader and statesman, famously foresaw the great victory at the Battle of Little Bighorn, guiding his people with profound wisdom and unyielding resistance against American military might. His contemporary Crazy Horse, the Oglala Lakota warrior, was a tactical genius, celebrated for his unparalleled bravery in battle and his ability to inspire his warriors to legendary feats, culminating in the crushing defeat of Custer. In the Pacific Northwest, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce led his people on an epic 1,300-mile flight for freedom, a masterclass in strategic retreat and resilience against overwhelming odds, his dignified surrender speech echoing through history as a poignant testament to the tragedy of his people. Far to the south, Geronimo, the Chiricahua Apache warrior and spiritual leader, spearheaded the last major Native American armed resistance in the American Southwest, his relentless evasion of thousands of US soldiers becoming a symbol of an unyielding spirit that refused to be subjugated. Despite these extraordinary efforts and brilliant leadership, maintaining large, unified Native American alliances faced immense challenges to unity. The sheer diversity of hundreds of distinct nations, each with its unique language, cultural practices, and often centuries-old historical rivalries, made sustained pan-tribal cooperation incredibly difficult. European colonizers expertly exploited these pre-existing divisions through divide-and-conquer tactics, offering trade advantages or military alliances to some tribes in exchange for their assistance against others. Furthermore, the relentless spread of European diseases continued to decimate indigenous populations, weakening social structures and reducing the manpower available for prolonged resistance. Logistical nightmares in coordinating communication, food supplies, and military movements across vast unmapped territories for large confederacies also proved immensely challenging, ultimately highlighting the heroic yet tragically constrained nature of their fight against an ever-expanding, technologically superior empire. Despite the incredible bravery, strategic brilliance, and fierce determination demonstrated by Native American nations in their struggle against colonization, the relentless tide of European expansion, armed with superior numbers, devastating diseases, and an insatiable hunger for land ultimately led to profound and tragic losses. Vast ancestral territories were seized, populations were decimated by warfare and epidemic, and countless cultural practices were suppressed, creating a period of immense suffering and displacement that irrevocably altered the continent's social and environmental fabric. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming adversity and systematic attempts at assimilation, the enduring spirit of Native American peoples proved remarkably resilient. Cultures did not vanish. Rather, they adapted, persevered, and found clandestine ways to maintain their languages, spiritual beliefs, intricate oral traditions, and vital ceremonies, passing them down through generations against incredible odds. This survival itself stands as a testament to an unwavering commitment to identity and heritage, an ongoing act of cultural resistance that continues to this day. Moreover, the innovative and highly effective tactics employed by Indigenous warriors left an indelible mark on military strategy, proving that the principles of guerrilla warfare were not merely primitive, but remarkably sophisticated. Early American military leaders, including figures like George Washington, keenly observed and learned from Native American methods of ambush, rapid maneuver, hit-and-run raids, and the masterful use of terrain for concealment and strategic advantage. Concepts like disrupting supply lines, demoralizing an enemy through constant harassment, and avoiding decisive pitched battles in favor of a war of attrition, all hallmarks of Native American resistance, became foundational elements in later irregular warfare doctrines and special operations. Even in more modern conflicts, military strategists continue to analyze the effectiveness of these historical tactics, recognizing their enduring relevance in asymmetric warfare scenarios, underscoring the deep tactical influence that Native American military genius exerted on the evolution of global combat. Understanding this complex and often painful chapter is crucial for historical memory, demanding that we confront the nuanced realities of conquest and resistance, rather than perpetuating simplistic or romanticized narratives. It compels us to acknowledge the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples, the devastating impact of broken treaties, and the long-term consequences of systemic injustice. Learning from these past struggles provides vital lessons about unchecked power, the imperative of cultural respect, and the profound human cost of expansionism. This period is not merely a bygone era. It serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of self-determination. The continuing legacy of Native American resistance resonates powerfully in the present day. Contemporary Native American nations are not relics of history, but vibrant, dynamic communities actively engaged in reclaiming and revitalizing their cultures, languages, and traditional governance structures. They relentlessly pursue the assertion of their inherent tribal sovereignty, engaging in critical legal and political battles for land rights, environmental protection, and the right to self-determination over their ancestral territories and resources. Their ongoing advocacy for justice, cultural recognition, and self-governance ensures that the spirit of their ancestors' resistance endures, transforming past struggles into a powerful, living narrative that continues to shape the social, political, and cultural landscape of the continent.